There he is. Hey,
David,
buddy. How are you?
David, do you want me sideways?
That works too. Yep, that looks great.
All right,
How are you, my friend?
good. Do you like this? Do you like this up view of me?
Yeah, it's great. I got a kind of a CAT scan right up the
Mm.
old nostrils.
Hmm. What's going on?
Nice to see you. Not much. Just,
Look at this. Fuck, my PR machine's just working, eh?
it's just crushing it, man. The old Dropbox files to the email.
Just like
New,
that.
but it's great, man. Congrats. I dig it. I dig the record. It's so
Thank you.
quiet. It's like, I've been really into singing quiet too, but you're taking it to a new level.
Yeah, whisper core.
Whispercore, yeah, it works. It's cool. What draws you to that? Like, what is it that draws you to going quieter and quieter?
Because that's how I play music when I'm sitting around.
Right.
Honestly, this is kind of an exact replication of how I play music around the house. I play really quiet. I love singing quiet. Like it's like an ASMR thing. Like I get so much satisfaction out of hearing just a little the nuance of something when it's not like coming at you.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It just brings me such great satisfaction that I just roll with it. And then a good friend of mine, Leanne Simpson, I worked a little bit on her record, uh, and she's a real whisperer too. And I don't know. It's like I remember her saying that I had inspired her singing, and then I think I sort of got inspired by her as well, just to be like, like I think it's also a real juxtaposition to that. I'm not what you call a whispered personality.
Right.
So I'm a little much for some people sometimes, David. But the tears of a clown, right? Like it's I don't know. It's how I play. It's how I play guitar. It's like when I play piano, I play. I don't know. I'm just so used to doing things in like when I'm by myself in a hushed manner versus the loud essence of my personality
Right.
necessary. I don't know.
That's
I don't
interesting.
know. I'm just super into it, and I'm just going for it. And Lisa drives her nuts.
What do
She's
you mean
like,
it
"Oh
drives her
man,
nuts?
just sing, would you?"
Right. But do you think it's? I mean, it's just interesting because part of it, I'd imagine, it's just interesting because it's like, it's like a concept that you keep on moving towards, which I think is really interesting. And then partially, I'd imagine, and maybe it's not related to the fact that we haven't been playing live all that much, where we're kind of,
Huh.
you know what I mean? Like when you sing in a crowd, even when you try to be really quiet, it's hard. Even when you try to like let the mic do the
Yeah,
work, as they say. Whereas when you're playing around your house, especially if you get kids, especially if you're like trying not to disturb if you're aware of kind of your space,
absolutely.
I found I got real quiet. I got really quiet over the last 2 years because we were all in the same house for so long.
Yeah,
So I was just like writing these songs and being like, I don't really want to share them with anybody yet. I get used to playing them on a classical guitar, which is naturally a little quieter.
yeah.
You play with your
Well,
fingers, so then that kind of brings it down. So
mhm,
all of a sudden you're like, well, the natural dynamic of this whole thing is actually brought down.
yeah. And my interesting that you said the sound thing and live because I always find it's hard. I have a hard time because I have a naturally loud voice, but I don't want to sing loud. It's really hard to get sound people on board because I want my monitors really loud because I want to sing soft and then I want to be able to sing loud, but I don't want it to be compressed. I want it to be like
Yeah.
a thing where there's these moments where it's almost too much. And sound people do that. They're a little tricky little community, David, where they'll change your monitors without telling you
Right.
because they're like, no way, his monitors are too loud. I'll turn them down. And then you'll be like 2 songs in and say, "Did you turn my monitors down?" Yeah, yeah. I think probably too loud for you or whatever.
Right.
Anyway, I find like the fight with not the fight, but there's always I'm almost becoming a Jonathan Richmond where I travel with a little PA when I do shows now.
Right.
And I haven't quite yet, but I'm almost at the point where if I'm in like a 60 seater, 75 seater room, I might just stick my PA up and be like, I don't
I
need,
just bought like one of those sticks, dude. I bought like
I
the
got it.
I
I got
did
my,
it.
I bought the stick that said perfect for coffee houses
Yeah, I
because
bought
it's shorter. It's a
that.
smaller speaker stick.
That's what I got. I got like a Yorkville shorter speaker stick
Yeah,
one too,
we
and I
got
was
the
like,
same one. Because
it's
the,
it's kind
the
of
big
hard
ones
to
have,
make the move. It's hard to make the move because I spend a long time being like, I will never do like this. It's seen as so uncool for so many years, and then to this point at which you become older and you realize that it's actually a practical solution. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean?
I just have a little PA thing and it's just a speaker
Yeah.
and I put it on my little Yorkville coffee house. And I love that it said for coffee houses. And because normal speaker stands, they've got like LeBron James wingspan, right?
Yeah.
So these little ones are great. You stick them they're tiny and they fit in the back of
They're
the
amazing.
golf,
And
and
you're not
away you
really, it's
go.
not like you're pumping it up that much, right? It's not like we have an idea that like we need all this extra volume all the time. In a small room, you
Yeah,
don't need that much volume. So, no, I did it too, man. I got it right over here. It was just like, but it's just been, it's almost like when I've set it up, I'm almost like no photos. I don't know. Like I'm still not totally comfortable with it.
well, it's sort of like it's the clip-on tuners of it's like accepting the fact that you're in your clip-on tuner years.
It's totally, man. Yeah, sponsored by Kaiser and friggin'
That's
what's
right.
yeah, and yeah,
It's like you have it's like you get your speaker stand out and you get this loud and
the
proud
snark,
right on the
the
headstock.
Kaiser. Just, I mean, but again, a practical. So it's a practical product.
Yeah, I've
This,
actually I found one that the to dare this is exactly what people want to hear. I've got clip-on tuners that are really small and they hide behind your headstock, right by where the neck meets the headstock, and
right,
they're very discreet.
right. Who are you kidding? Who are you kidding?
Discreet tuning solutions.
Totally.
Uh,
Yeah, it's pretty funny. It's like adult diapers. It's just a funny thing, you know. It's just one of those things. You just get older and you stop caring about the certain. I've been joking that with like Al and Kyle, eventually we're just gonna be playing like, you know, bodyless guitars and stuff, like very lightweight gear and like
oh
orthopedic
yeah.
shoes, just because overall, like, you know, your back starts to hurt a little bit more. And
Have you
but
seen Buffy St. Marie? She does that.
yeah, and she's crushing it.
I know.
You know
She
what I
has
mean? Like, who
those
would
body
doubt she can pull it
sponsored
off?
by David Miles. All you're all playing Yamaha bodyless instruments.
Exactly. Totally lightweight. We can play for days. But I mean, it actually goes to singing quietly. I've talked about this actually with a fair amount of people because I've been thinking about this a lot. Like, I'm a pretty loud talker. So
Me too.
there's like a different volume for when I talk. I think I actually lose my voice more because of talking between songs than actually singing.
Well, it's
And
probably the amount of time between songs.
I'm cutting it back
If you're
from the
like
days that
me,
we toured.
if you're like me, that between songs, that can be like, get a drink, go see a movie.
Yeah, it's been a funny thing, but I also think that, like, you know, I've been you watch all these experienced singers, and many of them don't sing very loud. You
Mm,
know, many of them, even the people that we associate with kind of loud vocals, they're not actually really ripping. You know, like Sinatra or
no.
someone. You know, like Sinatra, he's obviously he can sing, he can go, but a lot of the time he's letting the mic do the work.
Yeah. I mean, if you're I think it could be said too, like the better the singer, the better the control, right? So for a pure singer, I think it's probably easier for them. Like I think there's people with good voices and there's people who are good singers, right? And people who are naturally given good voices but never learned how to sing necessarily might be natural belters, right?
Right.
And then as you're become a better singer and stuff like that, and someone like Sinatra, right? You know,
Right.
you learn to do a lot with nothing to save it too, because those guys, back then they just go on tour forever, right?
Well, that's it. That's it. And they know, they know there's something about energy. And again, it's this idea that, like, I think when you start, you're all about putting the energy out desperately into the audience. And there's something as you mature, you see mature performers and they're okay with letting some of the energy come towards them, not
Mm.
being like, do you know what I'm saying? Like that there's
Oh,
actually an
absolutely.
exchange. And when I watch like any older singer that I really admire, most of the time it's this reserved confidence, not over singing, not like, and so that's kind of what I'm hearing. And I really appreciate the record. I think it's a great record. And the song, like, again, like, it's not just the vocal, it's the clarity of everything, man. I've been really, I mean, I've talked about it before on my radio show. Like, your production, your sound right now is dialed in, man. It's
Oh,
dialed in. Like, everything's so clear. It's so clear.
well,
It's really, really nice.
I sort of feel like, I guess the genre I am interested in occupying is hi-fi folk, like folk music, and not lot like, I mean, I use layers, but I don't use a ton of layers. And I really want acoustic. Like, I've got a real thing for just the best sounding acoustic guitars I can possibly chase. But at the same time, I record so fast, like my own stuff. I sort of go like, there's songs on that everything is a first take. Like, all that song, all the same things for the same reactions. I played drums on that, and I only played it once, and I played them as a keeper, just a spotter track. But then Peter was away, and I was like, oh, I'm just going to use mine. And then I played bass once, I played the piano once, I played the acoustic guitar once. And not to be like, not some kind of punk rock, like, oh, I'm just going to do it once and it's going to be faulty and scrappy. But it's just like, I think, not, I know that I know how to get like a sound base. I know where to put a microphone, I think. Although then engineers sometimes tell me, why are you doing that? Because I've never learned how to record music.
Right.
So, but I just sometimes will just put something up and record it, because for all the time you spend on other people's records, I think there's a satisfaction in just doing it and having it done.
I bet. Well,
And then
plus
I'm also,
you've got your gear. You must have your space dialed in to a certain extent that you can move a bit quicker.
oh yeah, like when I'm here, I have the piano is always mic'd. I always have a vocal mic set up. I have two really nice microphones taped together for acoustic. I use an early 70s Neumann tube mic. And then I use a real secret weapon is a $200 Lewitt microphone that's made for acoustic guitars. And they sound fantastic. And they're both small mics. So I tape them together with duct tape, black duct tape, and I point them at the same spot on the guitar. And that way you can pan them and get a really nice stereo image. And if you line, this is nerdy, but if you
No,
line
no, I
the
like it.
capsules up, there won't be any phase. So as long as the sound source is hitting at the same point, that's where phase comes from, when the distance between
Okay.
sounds is different, right?
Yeah.
So I think, am I mansplaining this?
No,
No,
no, no.
no, no.
This is all. To be honest, I'm totally freestyling everything I record in here too.
Yeah.
I'm just learn. I've been learning through the pandemic, so actually, I find it pretty fascinating.
So what I learned loosely from people is that, from being in studios, and just like, the nice thing about going to studios is that you can sort of not poach, but you can just learn and watch people work and watch their workflow and be like, oh yeah, I'm taking that back to the shed with me. So you line up mics where the capsules are exactly aligned, and then you don't get phase. And then you don't have to put microphones all around you and stuff like that, and be like, there's one by your ear and there's
Yeah,
one
yeah, yeah.
by all that stuff. And I've tried all that stuff, but I end up being like, wow, I just spent like 35 minutes setting up a sound, and it's not really that much better. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's things I don't know. Like, I still don't really know how to record fiddle or violin. It's still like a guessing game. Like, I did the Dardanelles, like a thing from their Come From Away soundtrack, and their fiddle player came here, and I was sort of like, I don't really know what I'm doing, but it
Right.
sounded good.
Well, I mean,
Like,
you're
I put
using
a
your ears
I put
at
a
this
nice
point.
mic close, and I put a mic up high.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, and I sent it to them, and they didn't complain. So,
Right.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm part of like recording forums and things like that, and Facebook groups and stuff like that, and all that stuff. It's just so exhausting.
Right.
So long
Sometimes it can be
answer.
putting the cart before the horse. I mean, that's the big thing with I find. You know what I mean? Like ultimately, I mean, it's not that the rules don't matter, but you got to listen. If you're, you know what I mean? If you have a vision for what it's supposed to sound like, and you have good taste, and your ears are sound,
Yeah, and
that's
if you,
ultimately what needs to drive the whole thing. You can't be like, well, no, this doesn't. You know, it this. You too likely have worked with lots of people who know every single detail of every EQ and every compression and all of that, and then at the end of the day, the record doesn't sound good, and you're going, well, what? You know what I mean? It's
the
ultimately
biggest,
about what it sounds right, and there's a lot of
yeah,
different ways to get there. I learned that from
I,
working with so many different people, especially classified. Like he threw everything out that I thought was about, was records. I thought that, you needed this and you needed this, and all of a sudden, it was like working on a board that was 20 years old. One single microphone, everything was DI'd. You know what I mean? Like, and then all of a sudden it
oh
was
yeah.
like, but these are the things that are. They sounded great. Like once it was pumping and going, I was like, no, this sounds rad. It's because he kind of had a sense of how to get there. You
Well, I
know?
think as opposed to like a professional recording studio, which I do not operate or own, when you have a space, like it's 425 square feet or whatever. But I think that I have things that work here. And as opposed to learning from engineers that threw everything at it, my friend Zane in Kingston, who I record a lot with, his whole thing was no EQ, no compression, make it sound as good as you can without using anything except a really nice preamp and a really nice mic. And then if you can get it to sound good, you're not going to have to like try to fix stuff later.
Right.
And
Yeah. Right.
especially in this sort of in this more open kind of music we're making, like where there's not a ton of layers. Like I think if you put me with a rock band, I wouldn't have a clue what to do.
Interesting, because that's kind of where you started musically, isn't it? Like louder, playing electric
Yeah,
guitar, like your first band
absolutely.
as a what? How old were you when you started? When you started, it was Punch Buggy, right? That was like you were what, 17, 18, 19?
No, I was a little older, but
Okay.
I was in a band before that, like at the end of the '80s, called Go Figure,
Okay.
and that's when I was like 19, 20, and we would rehearse in my parents' basement, and we were all into just like Husker Du and early Dinosaur Jr. and
Yeah. Right.
stuff, and just being as loud as we possibly could,
And
and just sort of
now you're.
almost
It's like been a slow. You've been basically getting quieter since you were 19.
it's almost like you're not looking for fans, you're trying to chase people away.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That's
And I think like as I'm in my 50s now, I like to say I'm in the infancy of my demise. But there's something in the last, like the dawn of your final years, is like there's this sort of like self-awareness and self-acceptance, and just being like, I like what I like, and that's what it's going to be you
Yeah.
know
Well, this is actually kind of like the main thing that I wanted to talk about is this idea of like now, okay, you're in your 50s now. You likely have considered, I mean, if you're like anybody else, like me and everybody else, especially as you go through adulthood, when you're touring a lot, you're raising kids. And then there's this point at which you're kind of like, as you said, you kind of just go, okay, well, this is what I do. Like I've tried, I don't know if you've tried to quit or if you thought you were going to quit or if you had quit playing music, if you just thought, okay, you know what, I'm going to get a straight job. But most people I know after they're 40 basically go through some heavy stages of being like, is this a legitimate job? Like what, you know what I
well
mean?
i think
Especially during the pandemic.
well I think you also, because I know you personally, you had some almost not pressure, but sort of kind of family influence on you, like almost telling you like, I mean, you're winning like 17 East Coast Music Awards, and your mom's saying, "What an excellent hobby you have, David. Now, when will you be getting that job?
She
You have
brought she
children
actually
now."
she brought a job application to breakfast a couple weeks ago. She,
Oh, see, it's
she,
amazing.
she actually did. But you haven't had like, have you not had those doubts, or have you just been powering through? And what's changed now? Like, how do you approach things now? What's your philosophy in this stage of your
Well,
life as opposed to when you were 20 and going at it?
well, I sort of feel like I'm not. I'm a more. My personality is very particular, and I would say eccentric, and I would say the kindest way it's been said to me is I'm not really built for regular working situations. I don't think I could like work for. I think I could maybe like work as a carpenter's assistant or something, or maybe like work, I don't know, sell lawnmowers or something if I had to, but I'm not really made for like office work and regular hours. And I honestly, I think I just painted myself into a corner and learn to live and exist and know that this is what I'm going to be for the rest of my life.
It's awesome. And have you felt
Like,
like
I
that
mean,
since you were in your early 20s, or has it been more of
well,
a has it
no,
been a newer acceptance of that?
I didn't really ever, I didn't go into music thinking I would have a career in music. Like when I was in my 20s, like we were getting in vans and sleeping in garages and things like that. Like, and calling my parents for money sometimes and like playing like ridiculous, like playing multiple shows a day, being in like Texas and stuff like that. And not even knowing like how did we even book these shows? Like booked them out of a thing called Maximum Rock and Roll, their summer tour guide, and where you'd have all the venues. And this guy Andrew who booked all the shows. Now he works in internet computer technologies for banking software. Lives in Forest Hill. He's fucking millionaire. Meanwhile, I'm like scrapping it out, still dying to play Shepherdie Hall on a Thursday. It's like
Yeah, for
I think
sure.
at some point, like if you decide like this is your journey you're on, like I've thought about it, like during the pandemic, you know, things got a little leaner, but I think it was more like I don't know, like I think the one thing I did honestly almost do was become a temporary FedEx driver because you can pick your hours, you can pick when you work, and you make the whatever $18 an hour, and there's no pressure to like make deliveries faster or slower because you just look at the board and go and do it. And there's a depot near me, and I
Right.
thought, I could do this and make a couple $100 a day. And I
Listen to your
remember,
mixes in the car while you're driving around.
right? Exactly. Exactly. Drive around just with wearing your noise canceling headphones while you drive. I
Sweet
don't know.
mix.
I think because like there is a variety of income sources that I have that during the pandemic I wasn't quite as left to die as some. Like I had a pretty busy 2020. 2021 wasn't quite as, honestly, this year has been pretty dead, like as far as not dead, but I made all these records. So there's like this, you get this perception. People think that you're busy all the time. And actually, since this winter when I finished Evangeline's second record, I literally looked at my calendar, had nothing,
Right.
like nothing. Not a festival, not a recording session, not a garage show, not like the only thing I had was a family trip to PEI. And then I just thought, well, I've been writing all these songs. So that's when I made a record. And I thought, okay, like I have a terrible work ethic, but, my dreams are intact. So I said, I got these songs. If I'm not going to be making records, I better get them playing shows because I don't have any savings. I don't have RRSPs. I don't have a pension. I gotta like, you gotta kick the horse, you gotta be like, all right. So I made a record in like 3 weeks or something, and then just put it out a month later, and was like, okay, now I'm going to play shows, and I'm going to do this crazy thing called order CDs because it's becoming a boutique item again because vinyl takes so long, and people just want to support music. They just buy it and then throw it in a drawer or something. But I make CDs. I'm going to make like I'm gonna make a vinyl compilation of all my records because all my records are out of print on vinyl except one. So I was like, well, I'm not going to put them all back in print. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a subjective companion of my favorite songs on my records.
Great, great. Like a best of.
Yeah, Stand Up and Boo, a subjective companion of Jim Bryson.
Quadruple record.
That's too expensive, but if you can stick two records in one without making it too fancy and keeping the cost down. But
Really, yeah.
I don't know. I think it's sort of like I think like I will say like I wouldn't say I'm a punk rock person, but I would say that I was around enough punk rock to have people like, you know, Henry Rollins and stuff like that in my head and things like just figuring out how to do things when one road ends, you got to make another road.
Yeah.
And I don't have like the success of some of your guests, like I don't have like when you're saying that Afy did is I was thinking about him, like he can go out and tour, fill theaters and do that and songwriting royalties and everything like that. And my career never worked that way. It never connected that way for whatever reason. And it's a much smaller surface area I'm dealing with. But if you can diversify, David, diversify your resources, you can make it work. And then it doesn't hurt that my partner works in city government and stuff like that. So, I
Yeah.
mean, there is
As a family unit, it works, but there's still this idea of scarcity. But also I think, as you said, like kind of, and this is the thing that I find interesting now, like, whoever I'm talking to, there's still so much of the same challenge, which is like, as you said, keeping your spirit alive. You know what I mean?
oh
There's
yeah.
people who've got lots of resources and their spirits in the tank. It's more about being like, okay, I got these songs, you know what I mean? Like being able to have that energy at that point where you're like, okay, schedule's open, but now I'm going to get down to work and do this, even though it's not maybe necessarily the easiest thing to do at that one point, but you
Yeah.
still have that spirit and you're like, yeah, I want to do this. And I can put on the headphones or
Well,
listen to them and get excited about it. Maintaining that excitement is the key.
oh
You know what I
yeah.
mean? And that part's
Liking
not
what you
easy
do.
for sure.
It's loving what you do, like, and I'm not going to lie, like, I don't, you listen to records and you hear the flaws, but I'm really proud of what I did. And I have days of absolute defeat where I'm like, I don't want to get out of bed. I get the kids to school. And then I just tell Lisa, I'm just going out to the studio and I'm just going to hide. And there's things like you just feel and you just start counting up, but it's dangerous to count defeat,
Mm-hmm.
because it's a big pile and it's always there if you want to be reminded of it. But I live in like a small victories world now where it's like gotta count the good things and keep going towards that even though there's struggle. And I'm not saying everything's going to be okay because I don't have this like you got it personality. I have this I don't have it. Things aren't necessarily going to be okay, but I am going to fight for it, and I am going to try to find the light in there, as Bruce Coburn says, kick at the darkness till it bleeds daylight. And the demons are there, and the shadows are there, and but the road to hell is paved with all of my friends. So I just got to keep moving forward, and whether I'm defeated or whether I'm not defeated, it doesn't change the fact of where I am and what I have to do. And I'm not really into this sort of self-help, like everything will be okay. I know you're struggling, but don't worry, it's going to be okay. Like, because for so many people, it never becomes okay. So I don't believe in telling people it's going to be okay. I believe in telling people like somewhere in there, just find the good and just fucking hold on with
Yeah,
dear
right.
life.
Huh.
Cause you never know. I said to my friend, like, cause I go through I go through some quantifiable depression, and I say it's like the darkness is there and you're just trying to outrun it sometimes.
Uh-huh.
And by creating and doing things and finding the light, that's where I survive.
Right. That's amazing. I mean, that's amazing. I think it's totally astute. All makes sense. And in fact, I had that sense. I get that sense even from how you present yourself to the world in this idea of these small victories. It's like
Yeah.
it's a shift. It's a shift. And I've taken a lot from it. I'm thinking a lot of the same way. It's like we can be so comparative in the music industry. It's so easy to be like, well, why aren't I getting that? Why aren't I getting that? Rather than being like, look what I get to do. I just made
Yeah.
this record with a friend. Or I
You
just,
know,
you
and
know what I mean? I made this song with, I think part of it for me was the pandemic actually did. It took away a lot of stuff that I had been kind of taken for granted, and also just made me remind myself that at the end of the day, I still wanted to play music. It didn't matter. Like you know what I mean? I've gone through all these different iterations of my career and self doubt and depression and kind of going, what the heck? And then at the end of the day, when it was all like kind of burned down, I was like, well, what am I going to fill my day with? I'm going to probably grab a guitar and I'm probably going to make something. And ultimately, that moment of creation, as you said, is like, that's the light and the friendships. It's like,
yeah,
it's like the
community.
friendships and those moments.
Yeah. And, like, I mean, I think people will deny it and they'll say, no, I'm not a competitive person. I'm an artist. But I think anyone that gets up on stage for applause every 5 minutes is someone that needs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So once we acknowledge that we are people that need, and we are people that look around us, because it is, whether you like it or not, everything around you is presented as a competition. Whether you win a national music award like you did this spring, which is amazing,
Thank you.
or whether you get long listed or short listed or
Yeah.
also considered, or whether you are doing this or doing that, or there's always this, whether you want it or not, like if you believe or don't believe in an industry. I like to say I exist despite an industry, not because of it, but there is always an aspect of rewarding a victor. you know
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can read Billboard magazine and check out concert gross and all that, and it still is an economy to it, right? So and being aware that that economy is there, but it's not gonna you know I'm 53, man. Like, the industry was done with me 15 years ago, right? So it doesn't matter. I don't have an agent, I don't have a manager, I didn't even hire a PR person, because it's like I can't spend $5,000 on that. I want
Mm-hmm.
to buy a 2015 Golf with my
Yeah.
money, not
Yeah.
hire a PR person. I need a car to travel now, because we come out of the pandemic. And now that I've had to rejig what my life is, because I'm not producing as much this year, I am,
Yeah.
but I've got lots of stuff coming up now. So now I have to do a dance because I've planned all these shows. But it's like, it's always going to be there, that sort of nudge of competition, and people around you and the other horses. But I don't know. I just sort of isolate myself a little bit and be like, you're always going to lose if you put yourself up against someone else.
Well, that's
You
it.
know?
Well, also you're going to end up defeating the thing that you're trying to nurture, which is that desire to create,
Yeah, that
right?
beautiful
Like
small victories
the
mentality.
small victories mentality will get destroyed pretty quick if if that's the gauge. And I mean, I think probably for everybody, it can be the gauge if you want it to be. I mean, I was just talking with Brothers Landreth, and they were kind of referring to it as getting lost in the metrics. It's almost worse now because
Oh yeah.
everything is a metric.
And then and
Everything.
and then there's people that we know who are just killing it at social media and doing this and doing that. But then I ask the question is, how much love do you need, right?
Right.
Like, how much do you need? Like, when is it great? I got this many followers, I got this many, who knows how many are bought, but it doesn't matter. Like, how much love does one need just to be like, what are we all running from, right?
Uh huh.
Almost like,
Or running
like
towards,
just
running
running
towards. I
towards, like,
think that's the thing is it's such a rush, and and I think for me for many years that was I was kind of lost in that to a certain extent. I still obviously I loved it. I don't, it was not that it took away in many ways, but it was only until afterwards it did actually dry up my desire to go out. There was a point at which I was like, I don't. If you offered me the best tour in the world, I wouldn't take it
yeah.
because I just was toast. It was just like toast. I just didn't have
I think
any
it's a
nothing
really
left.
great thing. I think it's a really amazing thing that you moved back home.
That was good for yeah. It's been awesome, man. It's been
I don't mean
awesome.
with I don't mean with your parents,
No.
but
It's it's great, man. It's great
And
because
that would be okay too.
it would be. And I don't, I mean, I see my mom all the time now. I see her twice a week, which is a real joy, but it does change the kind of parameters of what I'm doing and some of the goals because it becomes a little bit more, I think it becomes more community focused, but also it's just like, I like being part of that. I like being part of a community that's not necessarily just, I love being part of a musical community, but I also love being part of a community that is non-musical,
Yeah.
like senior citizens that I know just because I knew them when I was a kid and I see them at the grocery store and now I'm raising my kids. Overall, like that stuff that, you know, when you're 20, you're kind of running away from, but then you come back to it and you're like, this is pretty special. It's
Yeah.
pretty special. Just the community vibe, the connections you have between people because you were in junior high school with them or you played volleyball with them in grade 8. And now you
We
see
call
them,
them
you
we
know,
call
dropping
them
off the kids.
we call them the normies, Dave.
Okay.
Being friends with the normies.
Really?
And it's nice. Yeah,
Right.
people have normal lives and normal day-to-day things, and it's nice to get a, musicians are great and all, but it's nice to get around people as well that aren't like during we just had this crazy storm here that I'm sure you heard about, and I met this
Oh
neighbor
yeah.
of mine who I'd met before but never really talked to. He's like this guy named Doug in his late 70s. He's a hippie. He's like, "Hey Jim, I got a 61 Stratocaster I should show you sometime." And then he brings me in his house and he shows me his wall of like 5,000 CDs. Most of them are classical. He's got the same Thorns turntable as I do. And I'm like, I think you're my favorite new person.
Yeah, yeah.
And you're like 75.
It's also like really important to realize to not lose track of what working a job is.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? I think sometimes we can lose a little bit of a sense of that, and so I really appreciate being back in a place where most of my friends are working different jobs, and I realize just how ridiculous our job actually is. Even it's
And
precarious, and with all of its like, and most of the time I'm like, what a crazy economy we live in, and monetization is a nightmare. But I'm kind of at this point where I'm like, let's just see how long I can do it because it is pretty insane. Like it's a
oh,
pretty
yeah.
weird pursuit, especially when you compare. It's different when not that I love. It's also one of the great joys of living in North End Halifax is that I had so many musical friends, but you can lose a sense of what it is to work just a straight up job, and you're like, oh yeah, I play music with my friends. Like
And then it
that's
goes back, and then it goes back to you getting to appreciate what you do. Like I'm being like, isn't it insane? Like for 3 weeks, I didn't have to do anything. I just had to get up and maybe like talk to Lisa about how we're going to paint the front porch eventually.
right.
And then when the pandemic hit, it really like backfired on me because Lisa started working from home and she was like, "Are you kidding? This is what you do? This is what you do, and you didn't plan weeks of meals in advance?
Yeah. That was a
Like you
real
have
freaking.
naps,
I was
you
like
have
the
naps
cloak
every
fell,
day."
man. The cloak fell, dude. My studio was right beside Nina's, and I could just hear her. This is terrible, but it's true, man. I could hear her just like working so hard, so focused, so impressive, and I was like, I'm kind of garbage. I'm like, there's a lot of distraction to my day. I mean, I'll be
I'm
out
like,
for like a woods walk, and then I come back for a meditation, and you know what I
and I'm
mean.
like having a nap. I'm having a nap on the couch with the cat. I'm like, "Sorry, I can't get up, Lisa, but the cat's asleep." And Lisa's just like, "You have to be kidding. This is what you do?"
Yeah.
She's like, "Why are you sleeping right now?" I was like, "Well, that's what I do. I get up when, we get Ursula to school. Then I come home and have an hour nap and then start the day." She's like, "You what?" I was like, "I have a nap every day right after I get up." And I go for a
And you've
walk
been
with the
hiding it for
mail.
years, for
Oh, I've been
years.
right. Oh, yeah. It's like the Wizard of Oz. The
the,
curtain is down.
the curtain, that's it. Emperor's new clothes. We're naked. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. It's like, I think all of these things for me point again to this realization that, yes, it's absurd. But if I add cynicism and non gratitude to on top of that, if then I'm grumpy, at the end of the day, because I'm not doing what someone else did, then I'm kind of like, it's one thing
Yeah.
to have a day that is shaped like that, but then to make my insecurities my family's insecurities, or like my grumpiness my family's grumpiness, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That seems like maybe it was also just the proximity. Like I'm really working on being the jolly dad. I'm really like, at the end of the day, I was saying this to Donovan too, actually, is that like at the end of the day, our kids kind of what they expect more than anything is actually not really being, it's not that they need us to write hit songs or whatever. I mean, obviously any of that is all good, but what they really probably want is engagement and joyfulness at the dinner table, which is tricky enough.
Oh yeah. And in our family, because of the pandemic and daughters, and one lives in the basement, and like the amount of times we actually get to sit down and have dinner together is actually not even once a week sometimes,
Right.
just because of schedules. And then, like just eat dinner at the counter.
Right.
Lisa will just be like, doing her thing. And, and she has like, she works for a city councilor. So she spends a lot of her day just listening to entitled white people complain about potholes and things like that.
Uh-huh.
Even though, like, after like the biggest storm in the history of Ottawa, people calling up right away and asking when their neighbor's going to remove that tree that fell in their yard.
Right.
And all that stuff. And I don't know. I think that I get to have more appreciation for what I do by observing how miserable people are in general, contacting her nonstop.
Right. Right.
And you know what? I'm a crabby dad sometimes, and
Oh yeah.
sometimes it's like, and my kids are like emotional kids, so there's like fly off the handle moments with my kids for them. They're like freaking out at us, and I'm just like, I don't know. I just have this thing, like, I feel like we're one of the first generations that across the board we're having relationships with our kids that are deep and meaningful as they grow up.
Right.
And it's flawed, and it's not going to all be great days, but like there was so much disconnect in my generation growing up of parents, and just parents being like, just being absent and not being at work and going out, and just like families that were like, the amount of people that I know that have told me that they did not have connection with their family at all just makes me think, I think we're the first generation that's really, really trying to be like, you know what, I want like my kids to be my friends.
Yeah. Right.
Like, I know I have to be their parent, but I don't want to be that dad that doesn't call his daughter up, for 3 months, and has this disconnect, and is like, they're like an integral part of the rest of my life.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Which is amazing.
You
Which
know,
is
and
ultimately what you really are. We're all kind of going for, is maintaining those relationships.
yeah,
I always marveled at Charles Austin. I loved it. He lived up the road from me, right? A great friend of mine, committed indie rock master, like one of the greats.
legend.
One of the greats, and one of the great people in my life. Consistently superior, But one thing that I always marveled at was his relationship with his kids. I was like, this, in many ways, his life looks so unconventional. He runs the indie rock studio, the most accessible studio in Halifax. That's the one that you make. You know what I mean? Like, he's always the guy that makes, when bands are ready to make a record, they're going to go to Chuck. And Chuck brings
Yeah,
out this beautiful spirit of creation and confidence and finding their voice and all of these essential qualities in making your records when you're finding out what you do as an artist. And he's got a wild beard and crazy hair, and he's got a totally different approach to most people. And then
yeah,
in the core areas of his life, he's really honed in, man. He's really, I'm sure he doesn't do it all perfect, but I always marveled at that. And I talk to him a lot because I have younger kids than he does, and I would ask him about advice, and that was kind of his thing. It's just like, I just maintain the connection. I maintain the relationship. It's just about being there on their level whenever I possibly can be, and trying to be as understanding as possible. And, as you said, you need to be the disciplinarian, but how do you mix that with being like, I'm available to you. You need to trust
I'm
me.
not
And
a I
that part's
I
not there.
I'm not a disciplinarian, really.
Uh-huh.
I wasn't raised with very much discipline. And I just have like, that is a thing of relationships, is melding your upbringings to work against with one another versus against one another, right? So Lisa was raised very strict. I was raised just like, I was a wild child, right? Because I was a riddling kid. Like nobody wanted me in their class, nobody wanted me on their hockey teams because I was just so wild and unpredictable. And but I think it allows me strangely to like look at situations and be like, yeah, okay, she spilled slime in her brand new comforter, but yeah, I know that costs money, but at the end of the day, like, I don't know, like I would have spilled slime on my comforter.
Yeah.
I would have tried to
Empathy,
flush a
man.
whole I would have tried to flush a whole duvet down the toilet.
Right. Right. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So I don't know. I just think it's, and you know, Lisa and I, like we do, she doesn't really like me talking about us too much publicly, I don't think, because she's like, you're always talking about us. But I mean, it's like, we have a little bit of a different way of doing it, but I think, you know, we complement one another too. So I don't know. I mean, I think that if I didn't have someone like her in my life, it would be a far different thing. Like she's like, her and B are connected.
Right.
Like they go for drive and stuff. Like this is my one thing. Like I don't have, my kids aren't into the arts so far. Like they're creative, but they don't want it. Like B won't take art because she doesn't want to be an art kid.
Okay.
She's going into high school next year. I said, you're going to one of the best art programs in the city. She's like, no, actually, it's the best dance program in the city, and that's what I'm taking.
Okay.
And I'm like, but small victories again. Ursula, I brought her to a skate park twice last week, and she's learning how to like skate down ramps a little bit. So you take what you can get.
Oh, yeah, and you don't know what it's going to be. You don't know what it's going to look like, and it's not our. It's those are the things that we don't control, as you said. Like it's a function of a whole bunch of mixed variables, and I'm the same way with Nina. Obviously, I don't know what I would do. Although we just did 10 days that she was away for 10 days in Toronto working. And I got to say, I really felt like my whole family really were betting on me to fail. And I was desperate to succeed.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Desperate. I put
If you
it all
want to,
this, it was freestyle. It was a lot of, improvisation, a lot of jazz going on in the house. But I did okay. Everybody got fed.
oh yeah, like if that. Sorry, I'm fumbling here, but if I was left with my kids, the whole world of my family, which is Lisa's family, because my family's all past, would be, he's not going to make it,
Yeah.
and we're going to tell him we told him he wasn't going to make it, and they're actually going to secretly revel in the fact that I couldn't do it.
Right. You could though. You could and
I'd
you
pull it
would.
off.
Yeah.
You know
You got.
what? We got a little Caesars down the road. We got Wi-Fi. We're doing good.
Exactly. Yeah, no, we got through it. It was great. But I know, I mean, for sure, for sure. Those are it's interesting that you say the balance between the two upbringings. I always think that parenting is just somehow just reckoning with your own upbringing, but you're right. When you're in a relationship, it's about reckoning with your partner's upbringing, which was in my case also very different from my own, you know.
Yeah, like like my wife, like if you didn't finish salmon on a Thursday, you get it for breakfast. And I was like, that's inhumane. My parents would be like, whatever, like as long as you don't burn the house down or
Right.
don't murder somebody in grade 7, like we're doing okay.
Right. Yeah, no, it was quite
Not
as you
murder,
know, it was quite different at my place.
not murder, but like
You've heard enough
accidentally
of
kill
you've heard enough
somebody.
of the stories about my upbringing that you have a sense that it wasn't
Yeah,
quite probably more similar to that of your
yeah,
partners.
yeah. Like Lisa, it's cool. She lived a cool life. Like her father worked in international development for CETA, so she like lived in Pakistan, in
Oh
Indonesia,
wow,
and the
okay,
Philippines
I didn't
growing
know
up.
that.
She
Wow.
traveled all through her 20s. Oh yeah, she's got stories that would make your
Hmm.
eyes rattle about being in dangerous situations in Mexico. And she got robbed at gunpoint overnight on a bus in Mexico and got all
Hmm.
of her things taken except for her passport, basically. Like Yeah, she's lived a wild life.
Yeah.
And she's like, tells Beatrice, I'm when you're a little bit older, because Bee's going into high school, she's like, I'm going to tell you stories that are going to sober you up.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
it's just like, it's like, when
That's
do you
funny.
tell Lisa? When do you tell them?
Right.
It's like,
Yeah, I've
so
been
I don't
wondering
know.
that too. But my kids are a little younger, so I can hold off. But again, I don't resent the way I was brought up. But it's about reckoning
No.
with it and figuring out what you're going to keep and what you're not going to keep and how it's going to look. But it's funny because I feel like I am, even if I'm at 10% of the kind of approach, I'm still an outlier in the average. Even if I'm at
Yeah.
10% discipline and strictness of what I was brought up in, I'm still the guy who seems like a tyrant. It's quite remarkable. But it's
Yeah.
just, but again, it's about maintaining the relationship more than anything else. So far so good. But I do look to Chuck. I look to Chuck a lot. Charles was a great
Amazing.
inspiration as a dad, and figuring it out into the next stage, like all of us into this next stage. And I've been interested with you is now like when you're producing artists, when you're producing young artists as like what are some of the things that you try to instill in a young artist when you're working with them, if it's their first or second record? Do you find that there's a perspective that you bring to it now that first of all, you've worked in tons of different studios through your work with Kathleen and your own work, you've worked in tons of different producers, different environments. What are some of the kind of like, what are the things that you try to pass on? What's the kind of vibe, the environment that you try to create for young artists?
Well, I think sort of for me, it's just like assisting and helping them be an individual versus sounding like somebody else.
Right.
And just being like what are records that you enjoy, and what is it that makes you want to, like, what makes you want to make this record? Essentially, I more have conversations about what it is that you like about music, and like about, like, why did why did you ask me, like, why, there's people that are much more, that are, number one, more affordable and more easier to get to, and have better schedules, and live in cities and stuff like that. And I just think it's sort of like very hands off but supportive, and just being like, I will tell people that oversing to just say that, what, like, you've got such a naturally stunning voice, like, you don't have to like put anything on.
Right.
I think my thing is just helping people find their own thing. I'm not like I don't know. If I would be a mentor in any way, I would just be like, I think I'm very supportive, and I'm just there to help people find their own way, and to find a sound that they're happy about, and that, like, the producers that come in and be like, this is what I think you're going to sound like. And I've never had that. I'll be like, if you've written songs, and also I'll listen to some of the songs and be like, I don't, it's not really a good fit. Like, I'm
Right.
not really, that's kind of not, I mean, I will go on, I like to challenge myself too, but at the same time, if it's music that I don't particularly like, if I don't like it, that's a problem. If I don't like the
Right.
lyrics and things, like, I think it needs to be people that are very lyric conscious artists and stuff like that I'm interested in. But I made a record really fast this winter with an artist that was 18 and from Hull, and they made, it was in French and English, and what I did is I just brought in these two guys that I really really respect the hell out of. The drummer Olivier, who's in Fat Nat and
Oh, amazing,
plays with
amazing. Timber
plays
Timber,
with Leaf
didn't?
Volbeck,
Yeah,
and
right.
Andy Schaff.
Amazing, amazing player.
And then the bass player Phil, their part, I call them the Polio Gardens gang, because none of them are vaccinated. But and I just bring them in, and I just, what I do is I take a walk. I say, why don't you guys work on a song with Mia, and see what, like, if you hire people who are talented, why wouldn't you let their brains be a
Yeah.
part of the process as well? And I was like, I've got ideas, but if I brought you here, I want to know your ideas too. I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to be like a dictator in any way, shape, or form. So I go in the house, read, or go on my phone, and they
Have a
send me
nap.
a text. They Sometimes I have a nap. I'm not going to lie, I have a little power nap, and they will text me and say, okay, I think we got something for you. And I'll come in and say, oh, this is really cool. And then might add something here or there, or say, how about we, especially people's early records, I think the quality of the people that you involve is as important as the influence that you bring in. It's almost like a facilitator in a way, right?
Mhm.
Like if you take people that you trust, put them in a room together, it's not going to come back and it's going to be like you, Zeb, which would be great too. Don't get me wrong, but that it's going to be in the ballpark because you've worked with them and they know you and you trust all these people, and you have fun with all these people and have laughs. And I mean,
Right.
and it's music is a really emotional thing as well. So being very aware of the message of the song and the emotion of the song, and I don't know, just sometimes get out of the way. Like I've really learned during the pandemic that I don't have to have an opinion on a lot of things. There's a lot of opinions going on, and I don't need to have an opinion on something that I don't know anything about.
Mhm.
So sometimes you just get the fuck out of the way.
Yeah, 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 yeah. A lot of the time. I mean, it also allows people to breathe. You like it though. You like producing. You enjoy the role.
I do. I don't want to do too much of it, to be honest. I don't want to burn out on it.
Yeah, right.
And there was a time I did a whole bunch of records and I felt like I was burning out a bit. The the biggest thing with me with music is I want to love it. I never want to like be grudgingly agree to do something because we need mortgage payments, right? So I will say that if music stops being joyful, I will happily work in the paint department at Lowe's.
Right.
I enjoy I enjoy the paint department. It's a nice conversation. Um, I could work in the lock section or whatever. I think that'd be my job. 16 bucks an hour,
Right.
you know. Uh, I just I think that if the one thing my parents instilled upon me was my parents had unsatisfactory lives. They didn't like their jobs. They didn't like the lot in their life they were stuck with. My dad was bitter. My dad was unhappy. He was resentful. He was cynical. They literally said to us, and I remember it as clear as day, don't end up like us.
Huh.
Whatever you do in life, don't end up like us, because we didn't want it to be like this. And
Wow.
it makes me really emotional.
Of
Like
course.
my parents both suffered from depression that they never acknowledged until later in life. They, my father made some very, very costly errors in his life that affected the family and the mortgage and stuff like that. And they just very, very dryly told me, you should do something you like.
Wow.
So when you say, what did you learn from your parents? The biggest thing I learned from my parents is what not to do. And what not to do is live a life that you will regret. So that's why I take a friggin' nap every day and enjoy the shit out of things.
That's the
And
best. That's it.
I'm going to play pickleball in 45 minutes with a group of seniors, David.
Because you're finding
And
joy, dude. That's the light.
yeah, that's right.
Because that's the
So
light. But I do love that, man. I love that you. I just like the fact that you kind of say, yeah, I like producing, but I don't want to do it. I feel a little bit like this with shows a bit right now. I love shows right now. I was at a point where I wasn't. We enjoy shows. We've done shows.
yeah,
They're fun, but I started to lose the joy. I started to lose the joy from the show, and now I'm like, okay, I want to be able to love shows forever. So I got to figure out how many is the right amount. What do they look like? How do
yeah,
they? And I do need, and that means taking control of things and saying no and saying yes, and you know what I mean. Figuring out how to shape it is figuring out what your life is going to look like, because it's different from everybody else's. You know what I mean? Like everybody's got a unique set of needs,
yeah.
and that takes a long time to figure out in the industry, because other people will kind of give you a sense of what it's supposed to look like,
And
and you know,
also acknowledging that they're not all going to be great.
yeah, yeah,
It's impossible to have lightning in a bottle every day.
mm-hmm.
So you have to do something to at least ensure that you're going to you're going to end up on the positive side of things, because I think it's really hard to harness magic in every scenario. And I really believe you never know when it's going to hit. That you can set up the perfect circumstances for an amazing show, and something just won't feel right.
Yeah.
My favorite shows are Sunday nights in someone's backyard or something. When in the old days, it used to be when you'd book something on a day off and you'd be surprised by it. I'm always here for the surprises, And
Yeah.
so
but exactly, it's like there's so much you can't control. I think this is one of my new philosophies going into shows, is that the only way I'm going to enjoy them is to realize, to leave room for the unexpected. And that means that like some things will happen that aren't my fault. Some of the victories aren't necessarily because of my greatness, and some of the failures aren't because of my insufficiency or whatever. I think that I kind of like, if something went wrong, I wore it. I went home and I beat myself up for it. If it went great, I was the kid. It's not like there's so much more. My philosophy now is like, leave room for the unexpected. And the unexpected can come in a lot of forms. Sometimes it's not good, sometimes it's not bad. But you're not, as you said, like, you're actually not 100% responsible. You can have, for everything, that every interaction that takes place, you can't control how every single person in those seats is going to react to your song or your banter or what happens next, or if you played 2 slow songs in a row, or if you know what I mean? How many nights have you finished a show and you're like, best show ever, and then you sell a single piece of merch, and then you know what I mean? Like, you don't.
Yeah, right.
There's too many variables, and what we perceive as being the victories aren't necessarily. Like, it's just, there's so many more. Everybody's in their own little world, and so there's so much you can't control. And I'm trying to accept that as a way of going, no, I can control the joy. I can enjoy. I can control certain elements of what's happening, and just let it be. Try to accept a bit of the unexpectedness of it.
Absolutely. I'd say for me, because I still have those shows where I come home high and I come home low, but lately I've been taking a moment before I play, and I say to myself, don't presume anything and don't assume anything. Just like, I know gratitude is the most overused word in the world right now, but just like, try to get something from it. Try to not be worried about the guy that you can see is falling asleep in the corner. One thing I've started doing is I have a pair of computer glasses that are for medium distance, and I've started wearing them at shows so the crowd is blurry.
Interesting. I think you had mentioned something like that before to me.
Well, I wear
some sort of, that's very interesting. Just blur it out.
Like, I mean, I can still see them, but I can't see the nuance necessarily, so that it just allows me. Also, marijuana has been amazing for me playing, because it allows me to disconnect slightly with my negative side.
Okay.
With my side that's saying this is going terrible.
Right.
Why are you doing this? Why do you still play music? This is embarrassing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm always there's always a little bit of us that becomes the kid, right? I'm on stage middle show and I'm like, fuck, all my friends have pensions, and why am I standing here in front of 14 people at age 52? This is embarrassing.
Yeah.
That you're still going. Like I have an accountant who said, if you were a real business, you would have folded years ago.
Well, I talked to my brother who is an entrepreneur, and I'm like, man, and he's telling me all these kind of things that he does and checking up on his bottom line and his quarterly growth. And I'm like, if I did that, I would have to stop. Like, if I looked at it too honestly, I hate to say it, but I probably would. It wouldn't work. I couldn't treat it like a regular enterprise in many ways. I need to be responsible. I need to not spend too much money. I need to be careful. But there's a whole bunch of madness that goes with this job.
And there's no, the corporate ideology of percentile growth each year. That is not happening in our world. It's like, one year you're like, wow, I made that much money. How did that happen? Next year it's like, wow, I didn't make any money.
Yeah.
Or
and I worked the whole time. Yeah, of course.
And it's like, and if you ever want to get put in your place, go into your bank and try to renegotiate your mortgage. It's like the Royal Bank laughed at me essentially.
Right.
When they said I had a Royal Bank person say to me, You know, you musicians, you're always you self-employed people, you're always trying to make it look like you make more money than you do, but then you want to write, and then you write everything off. So you want the best of both worlds, but that's not how it works. You don't make enough money.
Right. Yeah.
This is the number, and this is the number. And I was so offended.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
now I have a mortgage. I have a mortgage through a credit union that the fire department uses. So, and they're like made for self-employed people, and they're like, I've sort of, even in the financial world, I've met my people,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So that's a victory, man.
because the banks, they don't want anything to do with us.
Right.
They think this is like, they just look at the numbers, they look at this side and
They're
say,
not wrong in a lot of
they're like,
ways, right? They're like, but they're not built for artists. That's for sure.
oh,
Well,
I
that's what
mean,
I'm saying. That's too much truth. That's too much
I
truth.
know, right? I know. That's why it's like sometimes I let my taxes slide for a little bit, do them every 2 years. And it's like, the honest truth is, I don't want to look at it. I don't want to know.
The curtain. The curtain.
Keep the curtain up.
Keep the curtain up.
There's more than one. You know what? There's more than one curtain.
There's
That's
so
what
much.
I've learned.
It's the delusion. I mean, it's a funny thing about doing this.
Blinds
But
of all kinds, Dave.
blinds of all kinds, man. It's absolutely, if you look at certain numbers, certain metrics, it can get you down. But that's not what it's about. It's not what it's about. It's
No.
about the light, and ultimately about liking your job in your 50s and your kids.
And you know what?
You know,
Free, to me, freedom ain't a Canadian flag and a convoy. Freedom's like going to play pickleball at lunch and going for a bike ride on a trail. And like right now, I'm mixing a record for a North Carolina fiddle banjo duo. And it's the coolest thing. I've never done anything like it. They like reached out because they heard a record I'd worked on. And it's like this community, and what the people that connect to you and find you. And I've never been on a producer's panel. I've never gone to a music conference as an
right.
industry person. I've subscribed to any of that stuff. I don't like seek out work unless it's someone that I'm like, you know what? I just heard somebody and I'd love to work with them. Like the only person in the last couple of years is I threw my name in the hat to try to work with Leith Ross,
Wonderful. So
and
good.
I didn't get it, and
Right.
it's fine. Like, they didn't even reply,
Yeah,
but
such
I
a
was
wonderful
like,
singer.
oh my god! And I heard that debut album they made at
Mhm.
Humber College or wherever it was, and now they're blowing up. And
Yeah,
you know
yeah. I've
what?
played them on the radio show, and they do a duet on that Brothers Landreth records that it just is like
Oh
it,
yeah, because they're part of
phenomenal.
the Landreths. One of the Landreths have something to do with their career,
Okay.
whether it's their label or their management
I
is
think so.
is connected.
Man, Winnipeg has got amazing. There's a video that Begonia did, a live video that Leith sings on, and
Well,
it's
Leith
so
lives
beautiful.
here.
Oh wow, okay.
She
Oh
lives
wow.
in Manotick. She
Yeah, yeah,
lives.
wow.
They sorry,
Yeah.
they live with their parents on Manotick, I think,
Oh, I
on the
didn't know that.
river.
Wow. No,
Well, they're really
extraordinary
young,
talent. Yeah. Wow,
and
really?
they're just, it's incredible,
Yeah.
and I just feel like, so it. My daughter said to me, I think it's weird that you work with a 24-year-old, like with Evan. I was like, why? It's like, well, you're in your 50s. Isn't it weird that you're working with younger people like that? Shouldn't you be producing people your age? I was like, fine. It's weird.
Right. No, it's
No,
great,
but
man. That's what
being
it's great.
I think, going back to the idea of production or whatever, it's just, I think when you get a young artist, just being a champion for what they want,
Mhm.
right? And there's people that don't know what they want, but those completely don't know what they want. But those generally aren't the people that I'm working with. Like,
Right.
I think if I somehow get connected to somebody, they usually are have something going on with their songs or in their mind that they're confident about seeking.
Yeah. It suggests that there's a direction. It senses there's
Yeah,
a direction. No, I think that's all you're looking for, is to help move along a direction that already exists, or help them find
absolutely.
that direction. I find that, but the records sound phenomenal, so people will keep on coming because they're just great. I find
Yeah, and I think
it's been
like,
really neat to hear Canadian. I listen to so much Canadian music now because of this radio show, so I'm constantly listening to Canadian music, which I did. I had a certain sense of it, but now I'm kind of like really engaged. But it really, first of all, there's a ton of it. There's a ton of amazing music being made in Canada all the time. Like there's no shortage of it, and your records really stand out as being like
aw,
clear and great to play. I just love play. I can play them easy
well,
on my on not your records and then the records you produce. I just find, oh man, they're so satisfying.
I think that it's fairly transparent that I make the kind of music that I enjoy listening to.
Right. It's all
But
you
I
can do.
also I also love listening to really lo-fi, like early Sebadoh and sludgy,
Right.
kind of messy sounding stuff too. But like for me, like that Bonnie Light Horseman record just knocked me off my feet.
So
And
beautiful.
I
Mm.
actually don't listen to a ton of Canadian music per se. I only listen to what I find, right? And I think I'm a seeker. I think we all are seekers, right? And I think that that's something that especially as I'm probably 10 years older than you, but as we keep going forward, I think if we just keep being seekers and keep being hungry, um, um, that's the only way to stay interested, is to
That's
be
it.
interested.
I know.
You know,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'd stay interested, be stay interesting.
and
Like
not
that's
in,
that's the only way is to keep that desire to seek. You're absolutely right.
I will only name drop once in this, but Gord Downey, when I traveled with him for a year, almost a year, he said to me once something that stuck with me so deeply. He said to me, Jim, anybody can be interesting. That's easy. What you want to find are the people who are interested,
Hmm.
because to be interesting is literally, it can be an act, right? But to be interested in things and to be a seeker and to be searching for things and to be chasing things, that's satisfying, right?
It's magic. It's also what allows you to keep the career going. Those are the real challenges. That's what really is the thing that sustains you through the next decades.
Yeah.
Right? It's like is that desire to seek, is that desire to move forward and keep on exploring despite you know what I mean, despite what's behind the curtain.
Well, sometimes music sometimes it feels that I'm still like a dancing dog with people shooting at my feet, right?
Yeah.
So, like, to be an entertainer or to be a performer or whatever, there's a certain, like, I never felt like I was like a performer. I just felt like I just dragged my life onto the stage,
Right. Yeah. Interesting.
flaws and all,
Yeah.
and that's why I do think that's why I'm not more successful, is that I really think I drag a flawed skeleton out there and just try to have a real experience.
At the same time, I don't know if you'd still be doing it if you had tried to present something that you weren't. Right? That would
Yeah.
have, to me, it feels like a burden that is unbearable.
Can you imagine the toupee? That would have got tiring, eh?
For instance.
Well,
For,
I watched a clip of the Tonys, and Billy Crystal was in a toupee, and I thought or he has plugs or something, because his hair was a straight hairline of gray, and I said, Billy Crystal, you don't
really?
need to do that.
No. No.
My neighbor got a toupee one day. I was a kid, and all of a sudden, my neighbor had a big pile of curly hair on the top of his head, and my dad looked out the window and said, Jesus, look at Carl. And it's like, that's like the encore, right? It's like, it's coming. So I don't I I've joined the movement, the growing movement of people. I don't do encores
Right.
unless it's insane. I just tell people, let's not fool each
Let's not
other.
do this.
I'm going to go over there. If you don't cheer loud enough, I'm going to go home and feel like shit. So let's skip it.
Yeah, there you go. Put it on them. Just put it
Let's
on
skip
them.
it. I've also told audiences, I don't genuinely, I'm here for the applause. If you actually aren't having a good time, just cheer a little bit louder so we can keep up the you know
The
keep
charade.
it up. Yeah, let's keep up the charade. Let's cheer for me. Let's let me leave this relationship feeling amazing.
Yeah. We're talking at most it's 90 minutes of your time.
At most. I will not keep you here for 90 minutes. I promise.
Oh man, it's great to get to do this, Jim. Thank you for
Uh,
taking the time. I knew it would be really fun. I just appreciate it so much. It's great to catch up.
I really rambled and I'm sorry. Are you going
You,
to edit this?
no, I don't edit anything.
Oh, is my
From
angle good? You know
you,
what I got? I started thinking about 70 minutes into this. Why am I sitting like this? This is a terrible. I should have had the camera up here and been like,
it's yeah. They should, then it would have been just wouldn't have been the real Jim Bryson.
and you know what? And I got to drink 2 liters of water. So I got my Christmas edition Nalgene jar, half price at the Rexall pharmacy.
Nova Scotia tartan. It's almost the Nova Scotia tartan on that thing.
All right. Isn't that good? I was waiting in line for the postal queue and I looked to my right and there were the half price Christmas Nalgene jars.
Yeah,
And this is how, and I was like, all through the podcast, I'm going,
that's good, man.
powders, coffee.
It's not. We get to do whatever we want. That's the nice part about this. No edits, just straight up, man.
Age, putting on my age defining cream before we start. Yeah. Thank you, David. You're such a friggin' light
buddy.
in this country.
Oh, you're the sweetest, man.
And
Love
congratulations.
You,
Congratulations on your National Music Award. That's incredible.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it was fun. It was really, really fun. Really, really fun because and I've said this before, but like it was all about the seeking. It wasn't actually intended to even come out. It was just fun with friends.
I also think it's so cool. I think it's so cool. I don't mean this ironically. I mean this like celebrational, that in a world where you have made your living and your whole life singing, that you also can be celebrated for like, because when I met you, you are so into groove and you are so into things like Bill Withers and all that stuff. And when we would drive around and I coaxed that speeding ticket out of you, come on, David, just a little faster.
I just told my kids about that. We were driving to St. Andrews and I was like, I got a speeding ticket here. One of the only ones I've ever got with Jim Bryson on our way to
We're
CBC.
like rocking Bill Withers and Dave can't keep it down. It's like you're a groove, like you love that stuff so much and you're just so into so many. So to be able to celebrate your interest in music as well as your creation of it, I think is a pretty amazing thing to be able to do.
I'm just glad that you know me well enough to know that is like a huge part of my life. So to actually make these records that sound like that, that draw on that kind of like jazz, funk, soul, early stuff that, it was really, really, I mean, that's why we made it. 'Cause it was going to be fun. It was just like in here with, my DI guitar playing at, is the tightest grooves we could play. It was really extraordinarily fun. Yeah.
It was like the Flaming Lips. They won an instrumental Grammy.
Did they really?
Yeah. And you don't think of the Flaming Lips like you think of those voices. No. Like you think of the sounds, but really like music is a soundtrack. So once you just turn off the mic, there's a lot going on.
I loved it. I've always liked instrumental music. I loved not singing. I loved being able to play that music without adding words to it. I was like, I don't want to add words. I want to add solos, long solos by great soloists that I don't play. Like I don't play hardly any solos on that record. None of the virtuosity is me.
Yeah. I mean, you do happen to know some people who are pretty handy on their instruments.
Well, it's kind of like what you said. Why would I limit what it could become by telling everybody what to do? Why don't I just like try to build these little boats? I like to think of it as like a vessel that holds all these incredibly talented people together. And hopefully the boat's sturdy enough and like I kind of give it enough structure, but then say, okay, let's go. And then you get Asa and Leith, who are just these incredible soloists. That's a beautiful, my role. Like I'm happy with that role. I can't rip like that. It's not it's not what I do.
Well, I know we got to go, but I've recently done a challenge where because all my guitars have trems on them. And so I took the Bigsby off my Telecaster, ordered some pickups from Newfoundland, got an ashtray bridge, and I'm going to try to play and have my guitar be a guitar without any trem on it. Like, as I've been playing Jazz Masters and my SG for so long. And I realized that I relied on that stuff so much but I play so much acoustic guitar. Why is my first electric I pick up? Why am I dive bombing?
Yeah,
Why
yeah.
am I, and I can't play solos like those guys. So my thing as a guitar player is mostly just minimal and sound and things like that. And just like, if you can catch me in a good moment, I can sometimes rip a couple lines, but I can't replicate them.
It's all about the lines, man. You have distinctive lines. Distinctive lines. That's what actually
Well, I
part of the
love
reason why I love
melody,
listening to your
right?
record. That's what we're all looking for, man. That's why that's why you've gotten so much work as a guitar player. It's like there are a lot of people who can do some crazy scales and some crazy moves, but ultimately at the end of the day, if we're trying to have melodies that people remember and they can sing, and there's so much of that, you know. I love that about listening to you play with Kathleen because there's so many moments where I go, yeah, that's Jim, you know, and that's
Wow.
fun. That's fun, right? Like in a
Yeah.
great way, and I'm sure that's why Kathleen loves it too, right? Is that there's like it's a distinct relationship and a distinct sound, and that's as special as anything, man. That's as special as anything. I don't know. I can't play without. I just got trem. I just got it. It's funny because I did the. I've always had a Bigsby, but I just got it. I got trem, and I was like, oh wait, this gives me so
Oh yeah.
much. I need some
Oh yeah.
waves so I don't have to do as much.
Yeah. You take some trem and some delay and you're in heaven.
Exactly.
You know what? I want to hear something funny. This is so Ken Yates' new record. Somebody, he was doing an Instagram thing, asked me anything. And someone said, tell me about the guitar tones on your record and what's your guitar setup? And he said, here's my guitar setup. And I basically have borrowed Jim's guitar setup and I've gone for the same sound. And then he shows everybody basically my entire chain and what I use. He's like, you take a Jaguar or a Jazz Master, you put it in, add a Strymon delay onto it, and then put it into a Princeton reverb. Wham! It's not that simple. It's not that
Yeah,
complicated.
that's
This is what Jim does.
the secret's out. All that work. That's
No.
wonderful,
And then I
man.
said, and then he's just like, oh, I'm thinking of getting a compression pedal. I'm like, well, this is what I use. He said, guess what I got? He sends me a picture.
But why
I mean,
not?
it's pretty flattering,
Of
it's
course.
nice. And he's a beautiful guitar player
Is he
because
really? He's a beautiful
yeah,
songwriter. You know, I love Ken. I love his sound. I love his
he's a
voice.
Berkeley guy.
Oh, I didn't know. Really?
Yeah. He went
Didn't
to Berkeley at the same time as the Big Thief guy, people, with
did not.
Adriana
Okay.
Lenker
Yeah.
and the
Wow.
drummer.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
So he's a Berkeley guy.
I had
And
no idea. But what a beautiful sound. What a beautiful voice and vibe.
what
It's
a,
like Jackson Brown. It's like so to me it's just like in this great it's great. It's really good.
he's just such a killer person too. He's just
Is
so,
he? Yeah. I don't
such a,
know him.
so, he's so nice. He's super into the NBA like me. So
I'm a
we like,
see. I literally was about to break into NBA talk, but then I was like, "Wait, we'll never get this. Will never end."
oh,
Because
so now,
I'm so obsessed. I didn't know that. That I knew
oh,
I was getting like a sense that you like the NBA, but I had no like I am
oh
way
yeah.
over. I've
Oh
watched
yeah.
almost every game. I've watched almost every single night this year.
Me too. I watch. I'm like, I've got hacks so I can get onto NBA Reddit. I can't tell you NBA Reddit streams so I can watch any NBA game basically.
Oh wow.
And
Okay. So you can just switch. See, I had Sportsnet during the year. Now I don't have a TV, but I now I pay for TSN and Sportsnet so I can watch the
yeah.
playoffs because they're switch off because I was getting so
Oh
annoyed by
yeah.
missing games.
They're so
Sportsnet gave
true.
me enough of the games, but I am just like it is the most enjoyable part of my day. The kids go to bed. I have this little window and I get to watch basketball and I find it I'm not invested in it in a certain way. I'm not out on the court. There's so
Yeah.
much pressure on these amazing athletes. They're amazing people. They're just like incredible people. I follow, you follow the stories and
They are such. What I love about the NBA is everything the NHL is lacking,
right.
which is incredible personality.
So much
And
and
I will
intelligence and
say,
camaraderie and hard work. It's an ideal. Like so many of them are incredible personality. I love watching. I watch it with my daughter all the time. I'm like, look at this. Look at these athletes. Look at these people. Look how they deal with each other after the game.
look at Draymond.
Draymond, but even, but then there's yeah, no, totally. I do like, Draymond's a funny guy because I think Marcus Smart said it right the other day, which is like The question is, who do you want on your team?
Oh yeah.
Who do you want on your team? Those guys want Draymond on their team. They can sort that out as a team, how they want to deal with it.
Yeah.
Steve Kerr's a smart guy.
I'm
But
so I'm
they're not
so
throwing him under the
happy.
bus.
I'm
He's a
so
player.
no, like last night in the dying moments, Draymond Green has fouled out in 3 of the last 5 games.
Yeah,
Like he is trending in the wrong direction.
he's trying.
But you know what?
His mom threw him under the bus. She was like, I don't know what this Draymond is. Did you see that? She like tweeted
Really?
about her son and was like, this isn't the Draymond I know. Like he's not doing what he needs to do. And I was like, whoa.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but that's a lot of pressure, man. He's great. He gets
I'm
worked out, but those guys, as Marcus Smart said, he understands. It's
yeah.
the game takes all kinds, and we celebrate these guys from the '80s that were fighters and scrappers, and they didn't get any penalties, as he said. If he did those kind of things,
Well,
get,
the refing is insane. Like the
it's
refs control the game now, right? It's so sad. Like the amount of fouls they call. You can take 10 steps and not get called for travel, but they call every foul. They stop every 90 seconds to see if it's to see if it's a flagrant.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
a
And then
key.
anytime you drive, you're basically guaranteed to get called for contact. Almost any time you're in the key, it's going to be contact, even if there's no contact.
There was a comedian on Jimmy Kimmel in the last few weeks that was saying that the NBA is rigged,
Right.
that the refs control the game. The players get the first. They get the NBA needs it to be like within 5 points at the half. Then the players can enjoy the first half of the third quarter, and then the refs get that. The players get the first quarter to do with what they want. The game goes as it will. The refs harness it in to keep it
Right.
close.
That's fine.
I mean, it's a good point. Like, what other league can you literally take the best player out of the game by calling a few quick fouls on him? So you have
Yeah.
to limit his use.
No, it's
Like you can't do that in football. You can't do that in
right.
hockey.
Yeah, it's
You can't
aggressive.
do
It's
that
been
in.
interesting to see it
You can do it in
evolve.
soccer,
See it evolve. I
right?
feel like there might be some. I mean, maybe there won't be changes. I don't know. It does feel like contact is a very, very, it's questionable at times.
The
There was a
only way.
layup in game 2 or whatever. That it was just like there was no contact. You can just see him.
Well, there was a play last
Jalen
night.
Brown was just like not even.
There
But
was
it's
a
a
play
wonder.
last
But it's the
night.
best. It's the best sport. It's still.
It's the best.
It's so good, and I'm so inspired by it all the time. I love how people. I love this idea, and obviously we shouldn't just go. This is like where everybody is literally like turning off the podcast, except for those who are into basketball. But listen, like I love this idea of like when the light shines on certain people, they get better. It blows my mind when the pressure is on. Jimmy Butler gets better. He wants the ball.
Yeah,
I have a tendency to I didn't want the ball in the last minute. You know what I mean? I didn't want to be the guy who blows it. I admire that so much. It's like pressure's on. I
God,
want
don't
I want
pass
the
to
ball.
me, please.
Exactly.
I'm going to stand over here in the perimeter. I'm going to make sure I'm guarded. But
Exactly.
who's been one last person I'll mention because everyone's leaving. How amazing is Andrew Wiggins?
Yeah, amazing. Amazing. Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean,
Like, and
Golden
he's
State.
changed his role. He's changed his role so much because he was a primary scorer his full career, and then you go to a team with the two
Yeah.
best
Score,
throw shooters in the history of the game,
Yeah.
and he took it on. They're like, they ask him directly, "Do you wish you were getting the ball more?" He's like, "No, I just want to win. This is insane
That's
to
right.
be around these guys and then just be like me, me, me." It's like, no way. I
And then
love this.
That's right. And then he's getting more rebounds and he's passing. They move the ball. So they're tough, man. I watched them all year. And I just
Yeah.
thought, man, they're just so deep. They've got so many players that can do those 25-point games. And then they have Steph who's literally like, no matter what you think, you can't deny his ability to just shoot. He's a beautiful thing to watch. Watching him shoot the other night was just nuts. Every single person who's ever watched basketball was going, "Are you kidding me?" Contested 3-pointers from 40 feet out. Like no one has a shot. They're right in his face, and he's still scoring.
Did you see that there was a play the other night where he was just dribbling around the guy, and it was just this little microburst of he must have dribbled 50 times in 14 seconds and then steps back and hits a three.
Yeah, you're like, well,
And then
what are you gonna do?
yeah. And then Golden State was like they were They were such a huge lead. Then they looked like they were going to tank the whole game.
Yeah.
Then they just come raging back and bury them.
Yeah,
Anyway,
it's a very. I mean, I wish the games weren't so late out here. They're really late, and I stayed up the other
yeah,
night to watch the whole game, and I really regret. It was very. It was 1:30, and I got young kids, and I was just getting. It was like I partied, but I didn't get to party. I was just drinking water and watching a tight
yeah,
game, you know.
I know.
But
All right.
it's a beautiful sport, and this has
It's
been
my
great.
favorite.
Jim, we'll have to do another one then. We'll start our own basketball podcast with Ken Yates.
Oh yeah, he's he knows it. He watches so much.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thanks, Jim. This has been awesome,
You're
dude.
so welcome.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it, man.
David.
Take care. Peace. See ya.